Hello and welcome to another session on entrepreneurship and early startups. I hope all of you are doing great around your lives. So, what we have on our table today, we are going to see where the new ideas come from. As we all know, that innovation is the key that unlocks success and sustainability for the established companies as well as for the startups. Innovation has become a part of every organization's DNA. So, innovation is the job number one to stay sustainable and to prevail in this environment of cutthroat competition. This lecture is based on 6 steps as explained in David Ford Murray's book, Borrowing Brilliance. So, the question, where do the new ideas come from? To explain this, we should know that ideas are constructed out of other ideas. No truly original thoughts exist. You cannot make something out of nothing. Brilliance and excellence can be borrowed. So to explain this, let's take an example of one of Apple's product line, that is iPod, and there is a few questions that will explain where do the new ideas come from. Question number one, did Apple do anything from scratch while inventing this little device? The answer is no. Was portable music a new idea? Answer is no again. Did the technology that iPod used exist before? The answer is yes. Portable music was never a new idea. Sony had already done it with her Walkman. Creative Technologies, which is a Singapore-based company, they had this patent filed for a similar technology around a year before Apple launched their iPod. Creative Technologies also did win a lawsuit against Apple, and Apple had to pay around 100 million to Creative Technologies for infringing the intellectual property rights. What Apple did great then, because if the technology was there and if the idea was not that new, or the portable music was already available in the form of Sony's Walkman, Apple actually borrowed and combined. They had the Sony's Walkman. They had the troubles people were feeling with the Sony's Walkman. Sony's Walkman was Apple's analog and analog. They took the best part from the analog side and eliminated the issues on the analog side. They did not use the business model of Sony. They did not use the business model of Creative Technologies. They had the idea taken from the Creative Technology for the technology on which the device was based, and the portable music was there in the form of Sony. But the business model Apple used was for Gillette, where the Gillette handle, the blade handle, was equivalent to iPod, whereas the recurring sale of the replaceable razor blades, they were equivalent to the iTunes. This is what makes this product so great. So everything existed around. Apple picked up, combined, borrowed it, combined it, judged it, and enhanced it, and they produced a wonderful product line. So the field is open to everyone who utilizes the same or similar concepts. So let's look at how the excellence can be borrowed. The process of generating groundbreaking ideas has two major steps. Namely, we can call them origin of ideas and evolution of ideas. The origin of ideas as the first 3 steps in this process of borrowing excellence. They are defining, borrowing, and combining. Altogether, they formulate origin of creative ideas. The next 3 steps are incubating, judging, and enhancing, and they form the second phase or step, that is the evolution of creative ideas. The process starts with defining a problem. The example of iPod that we have seen, the problem was illegal music in the US market. Then it went into borrowing. It was borrowed from Sony, it was borrowed from Creative Technologies, and then they were combined. The business model was borrowed from Gillette. So all of these were combined and a new idea was originated. Then the same was incubated, and it was product was whatever the product it was coming up, it was judged, and then further enhancement was done before it was marketed. So the process starts with defining a problem, followed by borrowing and combining. This completes the first step, origin of new ideas. The next step is the evolution of ideas, and it involves incubating, judging, and enhancing. What do we do in these steps? In defining, we define the problem that we are trying to solve. Here, we borrow the ideas from places with similar problem or from the companies who have similar solutions. Then we connect and combine those ideas that have been borrowed. So once this connection and combination is done, the first phase, which is the formation or origin of creative ideas, that is completed. All those ideas which are combined, they are incubated. So we allow the combinations to incubate into a solution. Then we identify the weaknesses and strengths of the solution. Once the weaknesses and the strengths of the solution have been identified, the weak points or the weaknesses, they are eliminated, and the strong points, they are enhanced. This completes the whole process of borrowing brilliance. So next question is, if innovation is the key to sustainable business progress, how to innovate? What we need to do to become innovative? The emergence of creative ideas germinates the seed of innovation. So now the question is, what is a creative idea then? A creative idea can have two features. So the first one is how you define creative idea. The creative idea is the one that is new and useful. So what makes an idea useful? An idea becomes useful when when it is used to solve a problem. So Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Google guys, Darwin, Newton, Einstein, and many like these gentlemen, all of them borrowed. Newton and Shakespeare, they were even accused of plagiarism. So the process of borrowing has been continuously evolving with human evolution. Had there been no borrowing, there would have been no evolution. So let's look at this slightly closely. What happened over the course of evolution has been summarized here. This is the journey from rock falling. The rocks were falling and they were observed. Some rocks, pieces of rock, they were dislodged and they fell down. And in few thousand years, we have come up to Mercedes. So what has happened in between? Accidentally, a Neanderthal dislodged a piece of rock. He watched it falling down the way the rocks, the pieces of rock, they were coming down magically. He was amazingly surprised. The next day, he chiseled a wheel out of the stone. Impressed from his performance, another Neanderthal did the same with the wood. He had a tree fallen, and the new wheel was made from the wood. Later on, the evolution moved, and the wooden wheel, it was combined with a basket. The first wheelbarrow was invented. Later, it borrowed and combined with another wheel and a horse. First chariot was created. Two more wheels were added. The horse was replaced by the steam engine. The first automobile was invented. And then, having gone through further evolution of 200 years, the first automobile has taken this shape. So if there was no observation on falling rocks, or the first wheel was not chiseled out of the stone, there would have been no Mercedes. Or we can take it in another perspective, that if we all the time we are going to reinvent this wheel, we will take thousands of years to invent the car. So there's no point inventing the wheel all the time. Otherwise, we have to go for all this process. So the best strategy is to borrow from others and build on their ideas. So as we have already discussed, the innovation has become the part of every organization's DNA, and it has become the job number one. This innovation has always had different meanings in different ages. It depends on what the evolution period we are talking about. We have four broad categories for the evolutionary periods. Those responsible to innovate had different jobs in different periods. If the economic steps during those periods are taken as acts and the members of the society as actors, the agricultural age had farmers as actors. What was required was a strong back for the work that was defined by hard labor of planting and harvesting in the field. The 19th century, this is number one, then age number two, three, and four. So we have the agriculture age. Farmers, they were actors. Then with the advent of 19th century, the industrial age started. The role of the actors was changed. The new actors were factory workers. Machines were involved and work was defined by long, tedious work hours and repetitive tasks. Then, with 20th century came the information age. The new actors were knowledge workers. They gathered and disseminated information, and work was managed by management of facts and figures. The crunch age is conceptual age. The worker's role has changed. Now the workers have got to be creative. The nature of work has changed from management of existing information to creating new information. The product life cycle has also changed from years to weeks. So let's get on to the step one of this whole process of borrowing brilliance or excellence. The first step is defining. Defining a problem appropriately is more important than creating the solution itself. The first problem with the problems is that the stress is on the development of solutions. We are always fancied by the concept of developing a solution, irrespective of the fact that the solution may not be required to solve the problem at hand. The way we define problem determines the way we solve it. Hurrying on to a solution without defining a problem appropriately can be attributed to the genetic makeup we have. Formulation of a problem is a key step towards solution. Say you want to reach to a point that lies on a piece of land that seems to be a peninsula. You would make different arrangements. But if the point lies on not on a peninsula, rather it lies on an island, your strategy will be different. So if you want to go for a peninsula, you see from this side and looks like this, you may start building up a raft. which will be wastage of total wastage of resources, because you could have easily walked down the shoreline and reached the peninsula because it is connected with the land. Because you were viewing it from this side, it looked like it is an island. But if you have to go to an island and there is a real island, then this may not be the solution. The solution is building of the raft. The problem could have been solved by just walking along if we had defined the problem right. Problem is the foundation on which ideas are built. The option lies between the foundation on sand or the foundation of concrete shell. If we are stressing on building the solution, we have the foundation on sand, and this is what can happen. You may come up with an excellent solution that may not solve the problem that you are considering. So the second problem with the problems is the focus on solving the specific problem. We usually fail to figure out how the solution fits into the bigger picture. Every solution creates lower level problems, and every problem is a result of a solution at higher level. So here we have. So what we do, our focus is on just one problem. We do not figure out how the solution fits into the bigger picture. So there is an hierarchy of problems and solution, because every problem is a result of the solution to another problem, and every solution we are creating is going to create some new problems. So if we take an example of this indirect marketing, response rate is a high level problem, and it may have a list, an offer, a package, and the time it is going to be mailed. Each component has further problems and solutions. For example, the mail package may involve an envelope, a letter, a brochure, a response form. The color of envelope is a low level problem when compared to the response rate. So if you can mail the card instead of the letter, you can solve the problem in such a way that eliminates the low level problems. Sometimes it is more difficult to see the problem than to solve them. This is the problem of scope. Either the problems are defined too broadly or too narrow. Color of the envelope is too narrow and low level problem, whereas the response rate is too broad and high level problem. So we can use a construction analogy to understand the process of idea formulation. So constructing in a building is like conceiving an idea. The first step is the selection of site for building that is equivalent to defining the problem. Because if you have to define the problem, it is as important as the selection of the site for that building. If the site selection is inappropriate or wrong, you cannot have the building delivering you what is required with the building. So the selection of site is critical. The next step is that once the site is selected, then we go for laying the footings. Laying the footing is equivalent to doing the root cause analysis. So once we have the problem identified, then the root cause is determined. And the third step is pouring the foundation, and this represents understanding of the scope, how the problem fits into the complex hierarchy of problem and solutions. So number 1, 2, and 3. Defining a problem is as important as choosing a site. If you fail to choose the right site, the building which you are trying to construct will not deliver what it is meant to be. Then determining the root cause is as important as laying the footings. Because if we do not lay the footings right, the building may have weak foundation and it may fall over. The third step is understanding the scope, which is as important as pouring the foundation. So why are search results so bad? So this is the question. To further explain it, let's see how Google guys worked out the problem that led to Google. They were sensitive to the problem of searching and finding relevant information. Larry was working on a data mining project, sorting through large amount of data to pick out the relevant information. Sergey was working on digital library to design and implement the infrastructure for creating, disseminating, sharing, and managing information in a large digital library. In the process, they found Google. So what they were trying to do, they were never trying to invent a company. They were never trying to establish Google. Google became a product that solved the problem those two gentlemen were looking at. So what happens in this process of identifying a problem or searching for a better search engine, as in case of Google? Observation is the primary scientific tool. So Yahoo had already, Yahoo was there before Google was invented, but there were problems with the way Yahoo's search results were working. And while eliminating those problems or enhancing the solution, Google was born. So observation is a primary key in this process. It can serve as an extremely wonderful tool. We can use observation to identify problems and begin constructing our idea foundation. Why does apple fall and moon rotates? This is the question that Newton tried to address. And in the process, he found the laws of gravity. Then we had Darwin, so making patterns like common structural elements among wide variety of species, like human hand and bird's wing. Why some species exist and the others are extinct? He was trying to answer these questions. One of the tool that can be used in this process while we are identifying the problem or trying to explain our observations or go deep into the roots or do the root cause analysis, we can use 5 whys, which is a modern tool, but still it can be applied, because if you question a problem 5 times, you get to the root cause, and that is where the sustainable solution lies. You have to fix the root cause to fix the issue, to create a solution that will be sustainable against the cruel tides of time. So while defining a problem, it is very important to define the scope of the problem. What is the position of the problem in the whole matrix of problems and solution? Scope is the relationship between a single problem and its place in the matrix. So how a single problem is related to its place in matrix is determined by the scope of the problem. We should brainstorm the problem, not the solution. Because while brainstorming the solution, you may come up with an excellent solution. Say you come up with some satellites, but the satellites, they are space shuttles, to be very precise. So you have invented a solution, that is space shuttle, and you can't market this. There is no customer for the space shuttle, because at the moment, space shuttle is not solving a problem. So what we should be brainstorming is not the solution, it is the problem. Next week, once the matrix is prepared, we know that what problems are higher level problems, what are the lower level problems, how this problem was created. This problem which we are considering is the result of another solution. So what are those solutions? And what are the different problems that solution to this problem at hand is going to create? So once the problem of the place or the place of the problem in the entire matrix is determined, the problems can be grouped into categories, and that shall help us in determining the missing pieces. We can avoid being too narrow or too wide if we can execute it like this. So start with the matrix. Instead of looking at that single problem only, you should see the whole matrix of problems and solutions. If you look at the overall matrix of problem and solutions, you will get to know that that particular problem is actually because of another solution. So by doing this, we may come up with efficient or better solutions. So the higher level solution determines the that has actually caused the lower level problems. If the higher level problems are solved in an efficient way, they may eliminate some lower level problems. And when the solution comes up, some of new problems may be generated. So we should gather material to solve our identified problems. Once the place of the problem in the matrix is determined, and the root cause has been determined, that what caused that problem. So we should be asking what problem was solved that led to the solution that created the current problem. So for this can be explained through an exercise that Ford company did. Ford wanted the customers not to lose the keys. So what were the possible solutions they were looking at? Maybe bigger keys, a keychain with flashing lights, a keychain with electronic chip, and a keychain that may respond to the clap. So, but once they applied that, what problem actually key solves? Key has two functions. It lets you get into the car and it starts the car. And these combination locks had already existed, and this technology of not using the ignition key rather than this ignition switch or the stop engine start stop button, that was already there. So what came up? A combination lock. So you can combine this combination lock with an engine start stop button. You have actually eliminated the need for the key. So if they were just looking at the key only, they may have come up with any of these ideas. Made bigger keys, a keychain with flashing lights, a keychain with an electronic chip, or the one that can respond to your clap. But they did not do it. What was preferred? It was looked what is the place of the solution in the entire matrix of problem and solution, and it was determined that the two functions that this particular solution provides is the starting of the key and letting into the car. So that was eliminated. The need of the key, this is the excellence of the solution. So choosing and solving a problem, how the solution can be elegant. So or we can put it in another way, how do we choose and solve the problem? The most elegant solutions is the one that uses the least number of components to solve a great number of problems in matrix. As we have seen on the previous slide, that the solution was not a key. The solution was elimination of the key. So if we can do that, the solution is more elegant and sustainable. So if we look into the history, Newton solved Edmund Halley's problem with a single equation. Galileo was dropping objects from the Tower of Pisa to see how they behave on the surface of planet. Kepler observed the movements of the planets in the sky during night. So one of the gentlemen, he was dropping objects from the Tower of Pisa. It was to see how the objects actually behave when they are dropped on the surface of the planet. Another one was looking that how these planets move in their orbits. What Newton did, Newton brought the solution. One equation to solve two problems. With this one equation, he solved the problem of Galileo and he solved the problem which Kepler faced. So with one particular equation, Two problems were solved, and this made the solution elegant and a better solution. Then comes the James Maxwell. He solved electrical as well as magnetic problems using the same equation. So two problems, one solution, or one solution solved two problems. And then came the theory of relativity presented by Einstein. It actually used single equation to explain gravity and electromagnetism. He solved the problems of Newton and Maxwell both. So Newton solved Edmund Halley's problems, or he solved Galileo's problem, and the problems faced by Kepler. So Galileo and Kepler's problem were solved by Newton, and Newton and Maxwell's problem was solved by Einstein. So actually, Einstein solved four problems with one solution. This is how the solutions become more elegant and sustainable. So single solution to explain gravity and electromagnetism. He solved the problems of both Newton and Maxwell. Four problems were solved with single solution. The next step in this process of borrowing brilliance is borrowing. Decide what level to start. Do you want to start high or you want to start low? Where is the weakest link in the chain? Which problem is going to be the most difficult to solve? So what we can do is we can use an existing material to construct a new idea. We have to choose material wisely, as the quality of solution depends on the choice of the material. So what we have here, so when we ask uh, where do the ideas come from, what are the sources of idea? So we know that we don't know. Imitation precedes creation. So first you copy and then you create. So we should learn how to borrow the right stuff, how to feed our subconscious or our subconscious mind with the right sort of material. Material determines or design. Material determine design. Different ages had different materials. For example, we are over here in Stone Age. We had different materials, and if somebody was expecting that a sword would have been invented in the Stone Age, that was not possible because this is a product of the Iron Age. So the age. So the selection of material is critical as the new solution has to be created out of the existing material in that particular age. So if we are in the Stone Age and we are thinking of developing a sword, that may not work because the material which is required to make a metallic sword is not available over there and then. Then we have if we are in the process of borrowing, what we do, the source where you borrow the material actually determines the degree of creativity that you have in your solution. What matters where you borrow from is the search for material. You can borrow from within your domain, you can by studying your subjects or your competition. You can further step away or study the subject not same but similar to yours, or you can travel far and say a chemist can borrow from chemistry, physics, geology, or business people. So this is a perception and source relationship. If you buy from the same domain, you look like a thief, and as you are moving away from the source, you will become a creative genius, or you will become when you buy from a different domains, you will be termed as genius. Everyone is actually borrowing. So Further, your source where you borrow from moves, more creative you will be termed. So if you are constructing a new piece of software that you have got and it has got a navigation problem and you find the user getting lost, to solve this navigation problem, how you solve it? If you consult the people who are the software designers, you are actually working in the same domain. Then you can go for the similar industries. Say you can move to the gaming products or video gaming products that uses similar technologies. So now you will be a smart guy. The third one, you can move further away. So you would go to the places that are not associated with software but have the navigation problem, like pilots, sailors, truck drivers, and explorers. So more, further away you are moving from the source, you are becoming more and more creative. Bill Gates borrowed most of the stuff from the same domain. Darwin solved biological problems by borrowing from a different place, that was geology. Both Gates and Darwin were very effective. It is very important how you solve the problem by borrowing solutions from others. How the places you borrow from changes the creative assessment of your solution. So here are a few tips. If you are borrowing, how can you borrow? So there are three ways that you can borrow. Do the opposite of the market leader. Whoever is the market leader, see what they are doing. What they are doing, do the opposite. You can borrow from similar places and you can borrow from distant places. So the first point, which is doing the opposite of the market leader, can be explained. What happened, it can be explained through an example that involves Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and 7-Up. Coca-Cola was market leader since 1896. It dominated 80% of the industry. It was typical monopolization of Coca-Cola in the US market. In 1923, Loft Candy Company bought a bankrupt asset of Pepsi-Cola. They tried but failed to dent Coca-Cola. They decided to do the opposite. Coca-Cola was targeting last two generations. Pepsi decided to target the younger generation. They added sugar, reduced price, and made the bottle bigger by 30%. Within few years, Pepsi had 40% of the market share and Coke never recovered. A few decades later, 7-Up did the same. Instead of giving a brown touch, they made it white. Feeling another competition, Coca-Cola bought 7-Up. Then, then the next one is you can borrow from the similar places. Google guys borrowed the ideas from library science, which was not typical computer, but it had like the data science over there, a subject similar to the internet, but not directly related to the internet. So finding a page on a web is similar to finding a book in the library. Then we have Darwin. Darwin benefited from a book called Principles of Geology, and this was written by another gentleman of his time. He was Charles Lyell. The profile of mountains, the shape of river, the depth of canyon, and the minute changes that occurred over a long period of time. This was the observation Darwin had. So from the evolution of inorganic material, Darwin conceived the concept of evolution of the organic material, a move from the domain of geology to the domain of biology. He was actually borrowing from another domain. Then we have the evolution of the sonar and radar technology. Sonar and radar ideas were borrowed from bats that flew outside the home of the inventor in Lancashire. So this is how this brilliance can, or the excellence can be borrowed. So we today, out of the 6 steps, we have covered 2 of them. So I hope this is going to help you, and see you next time with the rest of the 4 steps. Thank you so very much. Stay blessed. See you some other time.